My colleague and friend,
we need to create
a roadmap
as to how we should move forward in terms of making not only railways more economically better off, but also in terms of finding out how this environment-friendly mode of transportation becomes even more contributing to global good. It's always a challenge for an organization like railways to balance many things. Railways, people perceive it as the only means of transportation for the socially deprived people. This is also seen as an enterprise run by the government, therefore it has an obligation towards, social obligation towards society. But if you want to run efficiently, you must constantly create revenues, you must invest that revenues into modernization, and that all the time it's an ongoing process. And for railways, generating revenue has some limitation. And therefore we should look at many options of how do we optimize the cost. And one of the major cost center for railway is our energy, the second largest in fact. And therefore to make sure that we use the energy in a right quantity, as well as we use the energy in such a way that we can optimize the cost is an important imperative for the railways. And therefore the number of measures have been taken. I don't want to repeat because my good colleagues already mentioned it in a proper manner. But energy means many things. Electricity is only one form of energy. There are many forms of energy. You convert energy, different primary energy into commercial energy. But to conversion depends upon whether we should convert a primary form of energy into commercial form of energy also needs some sort of energy again. So this is another challenge. So therefore we really need to find out how could we use as far as possible the primary source of energy into the system directly. And therefore solarization is a very good option for that. Converting coal into electricity is also an option which government of our India is using in a big way. More than 60% of the electricity is converted from coal. Globally also, coal is a very important source of energy. Oil is another source of energy. Different forms of fossil fuel like diesel, fuel oil are also forms of energy. And therefore, how do you actually use the source, what source of energy you use? Whether you need to convert it or you can use it in a proper manner is going to be a very interesting challenge for the world as a whole. This event is organized a few days before, in the next month, we'll have a very interesting conference in Paris, where all the global leaders are going to sit down and discuss about how to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So we are in the midst of a railway, which is an organization which has to optimize cost, therefore we have to look at energy. At the same time, we do not just look at energy only from economic perspective, but also look at how the whole energy scenario is going to affect the environmental scenario of the world. And therefore, making sure that we balance economics and environment together is going to be a very, very important preoccupation for anybody, but also for the railways, because railway is the single largest user of energy in the country. We have already decided that we are going to use substantially higher electrification targets in the next few years' time. So that would mean that we need more and more electricity. So if you are going to need more electricity, does it only mean that changing energy mix is the solution? Because we can change energy mix. We can go from diesel to solar, from electricity, from grid to distributed generation. All that can be done. But is it only the solution that only converting one source of energy into another? Is it a good idea? We have to do that anyway. That's why solar programs, that's why wind program, that's why waste to energy program are all in place for the railways. But what is important, and that's why I just confine myself to this today's program of energy efficiency. Even if you convert from fossil fuel energy to a cleaner energy, even then it is going to be an important preoccupation for railways how to reduce quantity of energy. So not to use more energy just because you are using clean energy, but how to use less energy. How to use energy more efficiently. And that would mean that we have to focus on demand side management. We also have to focus on energy efficiency issues. As we know, and this is very interesting, that energy efficiency, why is it important? If you save 1 unit of energy through energy saving, you did not require to produce 4 units of energy. So this is a very interesting scenario in Indian context. So saving 1 energy unit means you are avoiding generation of 4 units of energy. This is also because of our unique scenario of transmission distribution losses. It is also because of conversion ratio. It is also because then also it requires auxiliary consumption when you generate electricity, so many things. But therefore energy efficiency is a very, very important issue that we need to deal with. We have a law. In fact, I was the minister when we drafted, passed the law in the parliament called Energy Efficiency Law. So there is a Bureau of Energy Efficiency which is monitoring it in India, and therefore there is a standards which are being set up all over the country for various sectors. I don't think railways they had used any time. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency never talked about railways. So this is a voluntary action on the part of the railways. What we need to do in India, and my that time colleague Mr. R.V. Shahi is present here, who was of Secretary of Power, and together we have also worked on many of these interesting issues. What we need to do, I don't think we have Bureau of Energy Efficiency or laid down standards for railways. I don't think so, no. So I think this is a voluntary action, and therefore what we need to do is that let us set standards for the railways as a whole. So if at all this conference, if you can succeed in saying that let us have energy efficiency standards for railways of each of the operation of the system. If you can set up those standards, it cannot be achieved in 1 year, but those standards itself will help us to decide where the benchmark is, where we want to really go. But to do the standards, you also need to know the baseline. How do you know the standards? If you can set a standard which are lower than today's consumption, what is the use of the standard? So if you don't know the baseline, how do you actually achieve the standard? How do you achieve the baseline? That's why we started energy audits in the railways. So energy audit will let us reveal how much is the energy consumption today for each operation, and therefore once you know the baseline, how much should be the highest standard that we should achieve. This standard that we'll set up for ourselves should also be globally benchmarked. And that's why the UNDP partnership will be extremely helpful. Even if we set up a standard which may be 5 times better than our today's energy consumption, still it could be even 5 times lower than the global standard, possible. And therefore, setting up global standard and comparing our local standards with global standard is also going to be a very interesting issue. So I think we should prepare a very comprehensive roadmap out of this conclusion of this today's conference. As to, first we have started this process of energy audit, therefore the baseline will be available. Setting up standards should also begin for each of the activity of the railways. And having set those standards and comparing those standards with global standard will be also necessary. So if you have this comprehensive exercise, that would help us to actually know how we are moving. We should prepare a yearly report as to how we have progressed from the previous year, and that itself will result into substantial saving. In fact, I've been pushing my friends in the railway board that our target should be in the next 5 years or next 3 years, we should try to save nothing less than 5,000 crores from the energy use of railway. That is something which has to happen. We already made a beginning. They started buying power from open market through open bidding, which has resulted into saving. We'll have our own power plant, which will be like a captive power plant, which will result into saving. But that's a monetary saving. I think we should have an integrated plan, which will mean economics through these such commercial purchases. We must have an environmental plan which marries into this, that would ensure that the type of energy we use. But we must also have a comprehensive energy efficiency plan, which will actually make sure that it happens. With this, how do you achieve the energy efficiency? Only by setting standards can you achieve it. Just by pushing, can we bring it down? We need technologies. Because to make sure that we achieve these targets, we need intervention of technological tools. And therefore, this seminar, this conference is very interesting. Let us find out the best possible technologies available in the world which will bring down the energy consumption as well as bring in energy efficiency in a significant way. Each of these technology has a potential to make it happen. Now that brings us to another issue. How do you finance this? And we need to think about very innovative financial solutions. I know in Ministry of Power we have done energy saving companies. This is something which is happening globally. Normally what happens in case of energy efficiency is the benefit is back-ended and the cost is front-loaded. Because you buy technology, you have to first put down the money. Over a 5 years period, 7 years period, you will get a benefit. So the challenge is people feel, I will going to get benefit, maybe not tomorrow, day after tomorrow, why should I invest money today? So therefore, we came out with an innovative idea as to energy saving companies which should actually invest their own money, allow you to use that place. That is whatever savings they get, from the savings they try to finance this operation. I think we should also think about partnering with such organizations. There is an organization, in fact, by the Ministry of Power only, under Bureau of Energy Efficiency. That company also can tie up with us, and we should be able to try to finance this by some innovative action. But additionally, we must also think about innovative ideas with UNDP. How do you actually make sure we finance it? One is, of course, suppliers credit. Some of the technologies can actually supply this technology and can get paid over a period of time from the benefit that accrues from it. There are many options, but we must look at it. In this conference, we should look at this financing part of it. And another aspect, which actually should also figure into this, and I would have liked the UNDP to put it that as not just energy efficiency, but also demand-side management technologies. I think the supply-side intervention are extremely important, and we must put supply-side as one of the major priority. But unless we look at demand-side management and try to reduce it, it's not going to work. So energy efficiency will conserve energy. Energy efficiency will bring down the use of energy per unit of operation. But demand-side management is a completely different approach we need to use. Because essentially, we normally feel that there is a demand, that's why the supply must come. But why the demand is there to begin with? We should therefore look at, as we are going to do at energy audit, to look at the baseline, we must look at also the issues related to demand-side management in a very, very original way. We should not be working on this in a prejudiced way. Because if you have prejudice, this demand is bound to be there. If you don't open our mind to this, then demand-side management will never succeed. We must accept a possibility that this demand need not be there. And therefore, if you work like this, then only the demand-side management will really succeed. So it needs a different type of attitude when we look at demand-side management as a new tool of reducing the energy in a big way. So energy efficiency comes later, but demand-side management comes first. Because there is a demand, you supply. When you want to supply, you need efficiency. But why there should be a supply to begin with if there is no demand? And therefore, we really need to look at it. And therefore, it's this comprehensive strategy, if you can keep in mind, I am sure that will result into a huge benefit to railways, huge benefit to India, and also substantial benefit to the global community as a whole. And therefore, this could be our great contribution. When we talk about energy, I was saying beginning that energy is not just electricity. So therefore, even if you are using diesel, we must find out the ways of using less diesel. That's why this auxiliary consumption of some of the locomotives and others will come into play. But also blending of diesel with biodiesel, making sure that we reduce the cost therefore by doing that, as well as its environmental impact, and many things we should to look at. So I think it is a beginning. We must comprehensively look at the entire energy landscape of railways, find out various sources from where there is a saving possible, and I think that is what will result into railways becoming efficient in operation, as well as it will bring in a new thinking into the whole system. Because we are just carrying out a process, like we said that last year I used so many billion units of unit, next year will be 10% more. That way it is not going to work. We must go ab initio to find out why those 5 billion units were there to begin with. Why not we reduce the consumption from that point itself? And that is what will bring in a completely different approach towards the energy efficiency, demand side management, and completely energy scenario of the railway as a whole. So I'm sure this is the beginning. And as I said, UNDP brings in a lot of global best practices. Those practices can be used in the Indian context because sometimes that is challenging. The best practice in the world cannot be used as it is in any particular system. So customizing it, using it in the local situation is also a challenge, and therefore we must bring all this best of the people who are assembled here. Think about how can we use best global technology in Indian context in today's scenario, not an ideal scenario. And that is what will really make it happen. So I wish you all the best. Congratulations to the team which has put together such an interesting event. I know there are many interesting players who have come. Somebody has also come from Vienna who is trying to also put into place energy efficiency network. So some people have come from Russia, some people have come from Germany and other places. So I'm sure you also brought in some new knowledge which our friends in India will be able to use it effectively in modernizing the railway system and also saving a huge footprint of carbon gas emission as well as saving money for the railways. Thank you very much.